Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Irish NFL show in partnership with Pundit Arena. Happy Friday. This was going out on the Friday. Delighted to be joined with the usual team and a special guest today from the Cleveland Browns. A big weekend ahead for this man, Tae Davis. Welcome to the show, Tae.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be on the show.
Tae, I ask every person this question first on this show now, so I'm going to ask you as well. Have you any Irish heritage? Have you ever been to Ireland? Do you like Ireland? I mean, have you any affinity to this island?
No, I have never been to Ireland. The accent is pretty cool, though, I must say. But I think it'll definitely be a pretty cool place to eventually visit, though.
Yeah, well, you'll have to come over. You'll have 4 tour guides now. Whenever you come to visit this little green island, here, we'll be delighted to show you around. As Michael said, thanks for taking the time to chat to us. I suppose one of the things that is always interesting to hear from a player in the league is about the transition from college to the pro game. I mean, from the outside, look, we get to see the draft and we get to see what players are like in college and moving in. But obviously, there's a lot more to it in terms of what goes on behind the scenes. What can you talk to us a little bit about, that transition from college to the pros?
Yeah, I got you. I mean, the transition. Me for personally, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of guys. In some ways, it was easy, but then in some ways, it was definitely challenging. I say it was pretty easy from just a standpoint of the college coaches that I had my senior year. They all had some sort of NFL background, whether they were playing or like coaching or knew someone that was close to them that was coaching in the NFL. So our whole setup was kind of based off that and like how the league would treat their players and different things like that. And at the time, Brandon Staley, who is now the head defensive coordinator at the Rams, he was our defensive coach before he left and went to Chicago to become linebackers coach there. But just a short time with him, I learned a lot in terms of like how they install, like how they go about business and everything. And I say that that's a big piece of as to why I was able to kind of transition into the league as easy as I did. In some ways that I say that it was hard was just developing your routine. I mean, in college, like you have school, you have like study hall, like you have your set schedule pretty much. So you pretty much know what you're going to do. But now, there's no school, there's no one telling you to watch film or, go do this, go put in the extra work and all of these, like those things. So for me, the biggest thing was trying to figure out what worked for me and what didn't work and just kind of develop my routine. And for me and as well as a lot of guys, I just kind of picked a couple of like, veterans that I really looked up to as time went on and kind of just see how they went and carry on without their day, what they did within like their off day and just kind of pick and choose and kind of make my own routine in terms of what worked best for me.
Hey, speaking of veterans, I'm a Giants fan, so very interested to know about your experience with Eli Manning. How was he in the locker room? What was he like as a teammate?
No, man, Eli was great, man. He was actually, when I first got to New York, he was the first player that I met, actually, which was pretty cool. He was in the equipment room and he introduced himself and knew a little bit about me beforehand, which again was like pretty cool. I mean, that's a big deal for me for sure, having Eli Manning kind of know who you are in a way. But no, Eli was was a great player, great teammate, and just a, even better man off the field as well, and someone that you could definitely look up to.
So you got picked up by the Browns in October 19 and obviously played with them last year, played with them this year. Like this year, massive year for Cleveland, 11 wins, first time back to the playoffs in 18 years. We as fans can see the emotion from Baker Mayfield at the end of the game last week, the great radio call by Jim Donovan really expressing. I know the dog pound is going mad, but what's it like for you as a player in the eye of the storm of all of this? Are you feeling some of that?
Yeah, man, most definitely. For one, for me, individually, this is my first time, making it to the playoffs. And the first thing that, you kind of hear from guys once you get in the league is never take winning for granted and just how hard it is to even make it to the playoffs. And, there's guys that, are 6, 7 years in that has never made it to the playoffs. So I just feel very fortunate to be able to make it, within my third year. And, it's not a better feeling than doing it for a city like Cleveland. And, as many people know that, Cleveland over the years hasn't been, good. And it just feels good to kind of be a part of this transition and just like changing the culture around and like having the city of Cleveland be proud to call themselves a Browns fan again.
Yes, sir. And as the lads have actually, really talked about it there, huge week for the city of Cleveland, huge week for the Browns Day. As somebody in that locker room, what is the difference this year in regards to last year, do you think? What has really stemmed you guys on to get into the playoffs for the first time since 2002?
I wouldn't say there's not much of a big difference. I just think guys are, like the team is pretty much the same as last year. There's a few key pieces that, that have been added or left. But just for like the main focal point of the foundation, that is still the same, and all the guys kind of know each other, and we just grew closer as a team. And a big thing this year is no matter what, we're going to keep playing and we're going to have each other back. And I definitely think that's what kind of got us through this year.
And I suppose we're coming up to the playoffs, the business end of the season. For players, is the week leading up to a playoff game different to a regular season week in any way?
I don't think there's no difference. I mean, just the only difference you can pretty much say that it's not hard to recognize is next week isn't guaranteed. So this week everyone's taking it, doing their same thing as we do, treat it as a regular season game. But we just know that the reward is much bigger right now. You win. You get the right to move on to the next round. But if you lose, your season ends. So, I mean, that's pretty much like the only difference as of right
now. How is the morale in the camp? You've had a difficult few weeks between players testing positive for COVID, and now obviously Kevin Stefanski, head coach, is obviously not going to be available at the weekend. Is the morale, I suppose, the focus is still on the game and not so much everything that's happening outside?
At the end of the day, it's very unfortunate, that COVID is right now is kind of working its way throughout the team. But the main point is still the main point. It's still the main focus, and that's what are we going to do to be able to win this football game? If we have to have guys step up and play, that's what we're going to do. But at the end of the day, we're looking and headed to go try to win a ball game.
And on that, Tae, obviously this weekend you're playing the Steelers again, not only in back-to-back weeks, but like 3 times this year. I mean, as a player, with all the film you have to watch and stuff you have to prepare for, I mean, does that help or hurt at this time? Like, is it a case that there's no surprises, or is it a case of, hey, we have to double down even harder to try to find the chink in their armor, if you like?
I think they're just kind of based off of just a person by person type deal. I know for me, I won't say that it's like, it's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a familiar opponent, not only that, a rivalry opponent. So it's very exciting. Like you feel like, you've seen everything. But, I feel like both teams, knows like you have to be expected for anything at this point, just because of how many times we've played each other this season.
Tae, I'm not personally aware if you've stepped onto the field in London yet myself, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But what's your thoughts on the growth of the NFL on international shores? Obviously now looking very likely like an additional game, and once COVID is over, you could be playing games in China on a Saturday night our time, or who knows, in London or whatever. But do you think it's cool as a player, maybe traveling from the East Coast over to the UK? Is it a daunting prospect, or do you think it's exciting?
No, I think it's definitely exciting. I mean, it's kind of good to kind of, spread the love and then spread the game of football to other countries as well. And it's just another thing that can kind of bring everyone together. So I definitely think it is pretty cool. I haven't been able to have a chance to be able to play, overseas or out the country yet, but it was definitely something I hope to at least experience once.
Tae, I suppose one of the things obviously that's key in any locker room, and in a locker room where you have 11 wins, is the chemistry amongst the team and the way that the team comes together. I know when we talked to Shelby previously about that locker room in Denver, there's usually kind of somebody who is a bit of a prankster, or tells the jokes, or is the guy who chooses the music. In that Browns locker room, who's the guy who tends to bring the party to the locker room?
I mean, it's kind of tough to say. We definitely got a lot of guys on here that can definitely brighten your day up. So, I mean, it's pretty tough to kind of pinpoint just one guy. And then I think that's the best part about this team. Everyone is, pretty close, pretty tight knit in a close group. So, we're all feel comfortable kind of joking around with each other, picking each other up. If we see, a guy's having, a bad day or something, we're all, reaching out and trying to make him just kind of bring him along and make sure he's having a better day. So, I mean, it is kind of tough to kind of pinpoint on one guy.
Tay, just want to revisit your time to Giants. You started off, well. Things seem to be going well. First sack of your career on Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. That's a big rivalry. And were you surprised that your time there was cut short? You seem to be coming along. The fans were noticing, what you were doing in the games, and then all of a sudden you were waived and you moved on, obviously, to Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I definitely thought that I was going to be in New York for a while. When I first signed with them, the first thing, I thought of, and, what everyone told me, just, there's the history and the type of organization the New York Giants was, and I was proud to, be a part of it. But, like they always say, the business side, it's business. So, I mean, there's definitely no hard feelings there. And, they did what they thought was best for, the organization. But I'm very happy to be here in Cleveland, and very thankful for them for giving me a shot to be able to showcase my talent.
Tay, out of all the players in America that play high school football on their senior team, only 5% of them ever go on to play in college. And out of all the players that play in college, only 1.6% of them ever play even one snap professionally. So you've already beaten the odds by a long shot to be playing in the NFL professionally. Testament to the dedication, the hard work, obviously, you've put in personally, and your family obviously supporting you through all that as well. I'm just curious, though. I mean, you obviously were with the Giants, you're with the Browns. I mean, to us, you're living the life. We're going to be watching the games on Saturday with a beer, maybe some chocolate, kicking back on the couch and going, oh, yeah, that looks great. And you're going to be there busting your ass, sprinting up and down that pitch, covering on special teams, playing a few snaps on defense. Like, tell us about, are you really living the life, or is it just a constant struggle and you're fighting every step of the way in relation to this? How are you finding it?
I mean, it definitely has its pros and cons. I mean, the pros is, you're living your dream. You're doing what everyone, anyone in the world would kill to be able to do. You're part of that 1%. So it's definitely a blessing, and it's something that you definitely don't take for granted. But it definitely comes with some sacrifices as well, and those sacrifices are just family time, or with your significant other, and especially this year alone, with COVID, and you're not being able to travel and get to see your loved ones, be able to hang out with friends and everything like that. So it's very demanding, and it's not just like at one point in the year, in all season you still have to make sure you maintain your shape and maintain a certain conditioning, just to be ready. So, I mean, it definitely the cons is the sacrifices which you sometimes have to make, but it's what you signed up for. You knew what you were getting yourself into at the same time. So, I mean, it's one of those deals. But just going back to like times where you're able to make the playoffs this year, it just kind of makes all those sacrifices worth it, because you're kind of able to be able chase your dream and ultimately have a chance to win a Super Bowl.
Talking about sorry, go ahead, Colin. Go ahead.
No, just in terms of, I just while you were talking and about your blessings and the impact of COVID, I know that is something that has impacted on you personally, and you were somebody who recognizes your blessings, and you've given back. Maybe for people watching this in Ireland, can you talk to us a little bit about like the off the field work that you did? I know you bought you paid for a whole load of meals in your community. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So when COVID first started like striking, and it was looked like it was just almost like the end of the world, and everything started to shut down, I had two of my great aunts and a great uncle who came down with COVID, and it was very scary for them. There was definitely times where I thought that they weren't going to make it. And at the time, I was nowhere near home. I was actually in Illinois, staying with my girlfriend at the time, because that's where I was at once the state of Illinois shut down. So I couldn't really get back home. Um, so I was, up there and just kind of scared. I didn't know what to really to think, what to kind of what emotion to kind of show. It was just it's an emotional roller coaster. And I remember just talking with Alice, and just talking about like I want to be able to help, but be able to give back, but I just didn't know where exactly to. And then I started thinking about my grandmother, who's like she's back home in Alabama with my mom and brothers and sisters and stuff. They were able to kind of get out and get her groceries and the necessities that she need for everyday life, so she wouldn't really have to worry about the crowd and stuff and kind of get out and risk getting COVID. And started thinking about like other elderly people who may not have someone as close to them or able to kind of get out and just deal with like the mass crowd in terms of the chaotic deal that was going on at the time. So that's how we came up. We ended up finding Meals on Wheels, and we looked at like their motto and like what they were for, and it aligned with what I kind of wanted to do. So I ended up paying for 500 meals for them to distribute throughout America for in the areas that was like most impacted by COVID for the elderly.
Okay, I think that's the one. And we sort of say this in shows in April, March, May time. I guess it's the one experience that we unfortunately all share, and it has been this pandemic. It's just been a crazy year, and I guess it's been great to see the NFL get through the season now. And I know we've talked about Week 17 a little bit, but like for me, sitting on Sunday night, say watching I was watching Red Zone, but watching that last 2 or 3 minutes against the Steelers. What was the feeling like when you guys broke the hump and done that for the first time in 18, 19 years? What was that initial feeling like? Because you've seen the videos. I've seen Joe Thomas, obviously a legendary Cleveland Brown now at this point, the excitement that he had on just online, but it must have been an amazing feeling being at the stadium on Sunday.
Yeah, man, it's a feeling I will never forget, man. I just remember watching Baker taking the knee and watching the clock go, hit zero, and just hearing all the fans screaming and and cheering. It gave me chill bumps, just because I know the city of Cleveland. They've been, working their butts off, and being faithful to the Cleveland Browns in terms of cheering for them. And I was just so happy for them, but I was also happy for guys like Joel, Antonio, that guys like him. He spent, I believe, 7 years, but all 7 years with Cleveland, and this is his first time making the playoffs. So it was like bittersweet. It was very sweet for guys like that. And I hate that he ended up testing positive for COVID and won't be able to play in his first playoff game. It's a devastating thing. But it was just seeing guys like that in the locker room and just like the fans cheering and leaving the stadium and seeing how the fans were staying, still cheering and stuff. It was a great feeling, and I just wish times were a little bit different. So we would all be able to kind of get together and just enjoy it as one.
Tay, I mean, just want to say fair play to you for the contribution you're putting back into the community and helping people in need during these times of strife, if you like, and everything. It's a very honourable thing to do. But I'm going to ask you another boring football question, if you don't mind, because it's funny you're talking about the Browns there and obviously what you've achieved this far this season. Your quarterback, Baker Mayfield, obviously he becomes a lightning rod for criticism and positivity, and you've seen a little bit of that possibly in New York with Eli, obviously, in his final year as well. Just give us a bit of an insight as to what he's like as a teammate and how you find him maybe in comparison to Eli and the like.
And I love Baker. The first thing you see, he's just a guy that he wants to win, and that passion screams from him. And I know he catches a lot of heat, but Baker's his biggest critic. You know, he's very hard on himself. He's very demanding of himself. And to see him having the year that he's having, like I'm excited for him, and it's long overdue. Like I'm happy for him. A lot of people have counted him out, but this team hasn't. We've been behind six every step of the way. We're going to continue to ride behind him. He's a great leader, great teammate. He's always he's going to joke around and kind of get you laughing and get the mood to be light. But when it's time to work, it's time to work. So he's definitely that type of guy. And then you can kind of you can compare that also to Eli. You know, Eli, what a lot of people may not realize is like, you know, he's a little jokester. He'll tell you a few jokes on the side, little dad jokes and different things like that. But at the end of the day, you know, he's a true professional. And when it's time to work, you know, he's going to be working and locked in.
Tay, look, obviously we're playoff game this weekend. You talked earlier about like the living the dream in many respects. When you were growing up watching football, who were the players that you particularly liked, that you really enjoyed watching?
So for me, I'm from Alabama, so we didn't have an NFL team at the time. So the closest team would be the Falcons. But where I grew up, it wasn't so much NFL; it was more college, and it came down to Alabama or Auburn. So I was a huge Alabama fan. It was like that's who I pretty much devoted all my eyes to. From Glenn Coffey to Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, Rondo McClain, like all those guys. Like those are the guys I looked up to. And as they went on to the league and different things like that, those guys I would keep up with their career, but I never really kind of pinpointed, like an NFL team as my favorite, just because I was so wrapped up in the typical Alabama and Auburn type deal. But as I got older in high school and I started to play safety, a guy that I really watched a lot was Cam Chancellor. I just felt myself being kind of like a bigger type safety, and everything that I did, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to install fear in guys, being a bigger safety, and just be able to move like him, and just kind of be Cam Chancellor. Like that was the guy I found myself watching a lot.
Hey, look, man, we have a lot of not gonna lie, there's a lot of Steelers fans in Ireland. Obviously, the Steelers have with the Rooney family, a lot of Irish heritage, but there's a lot of Browns fans in Ireland as well. You got the Irish Dogs, the two Green Browns, and also in the UK, Paul Brown, huge Browns fan. So we want to thank you for coming on and wish you the very best of luck this weekend. Hopefully, if you go on, look, I tell you what, if you get to the Super Bowl, you'll have to come on before the Super Bowl for us and maybe tell us a few secrets to the AFC Championship game. But it's been a pleasure, Tay, and we definitely appreciate it, man.
Oh no, man, thank you for having me.
Yes. Best of luck at the weekend.
I know, man. Thank you so much.